Councilperson Jessica Bohannon.
Present.
Commissioner Mike Burrows.
Online.
Mike is online. Mike, can you hear us? Hey, Donnie, can you confirm if you can hear us?
I can hear you. He's in companion mode, so I wonder if that's the issue.
Sounds good. All right. District Deputy Commissioner Matt Deitchley. All right, en route.
With a blue shirt.
Councilman Dwight Fish. Councilman Doug Graham. Yes, sir. Yep. Commissioner Carrie Groninger.
Here.
Councilwoman Kathy Groninger.
Present.
Councilwoman Lori Hammond. Councilman Greg Hicksonball. Mayor Phil Jenkins. District Deputy Commissioner Todd Johnson. Mayor Gina Lichty.
Here.
Mayor James Mueller. Mayor Rod Robertson. Councilman Mark Root. Mayor Mark Center.
Here.
Mayor Joseph Talmer.
I'm here.
Commissioner Susie Wyrick. And Mayor David Wood.
Here.
Do have a quorum of members present. And I would also like to extend a welcome to Mayor Lichty for her first MACOG Policy Board meeting.
Okay, minutes for the June 14th meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Finance.
Good morning. So last month when we last met, we mentioned that we were going to do a budget revision during this meeting. So you should all have a yellow piece of paper that is the proposed budget revision. So we increased the line items of contractual services, audit, telephone, materials and supplies, software and licenses, insurance and bonding, and then we added in AmeriCorps living allowance and AmeriCorps member support. So living allowance is basically salary.
A stipend.
It's not called that.
It's a stipend.
Stipend,
Yeah.
okay. And then the member support is like their fringe benefits. So some of them receive insurance, and that sort of thing, and the taxes and that sort of thing. So that we broke that out of our own, they were lumped into our own salaries and fringe line items before. Now they're their own thing. And then everything that we increased was reduced out of the equipment and furniture line item, which we have probably explained many times is way under budget because we weren't able to purchase the buses that we had planned to purchase during this fiscal year. So are there any questions?
If it was in the salaries before, why did the salaries line decrease?
So our overall budget for salaries didn't decrease because that was what our salary line item was before. But when you look at our financial report, then the expenses will have decreased.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It makes sense, but it's just, when you said it was used to be included in the salaries, I would expect.
Yeah, I just decreased everything out of furniture and equipment. Our overall salaried budget was set at what it was. We were just, once we started acquiring those members, it was just going into our expenses under salaries, but I didn't change the budget for that part.
And the expenses for the salaries will just come in
Those-
under,
yeah,
under
those
budget.
I understand
Yeah.
now, but
Those
what you said, that didn't make sense to me.
That makes sense. Yep. And this is the first year that we had that AmeriCorps program, so we weren't exactly sure what their best line items would be to have. And now that we've gone through the last 8 months with that program, these line items make the most sense. And so that's where we kind of warned at the beginning of the fiscal year that we would make this change, but we needed some time to figure out what the best line items were to be reflective of those expenses. And so we wanted to make that change before the end of the fiscal year.
Any other questions? If not, I would like to ask for board approval of the proposed budget revision.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries.
All right. So our year-to-date, excuse me, our year-to-date expenses through the month of May for the fiscal year is at $7,073,434.12. And so to what you had asked, our salary expenses would have decreased by the amount of the AmeriCorps members plus whatever we had earned during this month. So that line item was adjusted in the expense side, but not the overall budget side there. And then our cash balance for the end of May was $2,525,383.75. And our overall disbursements for the month of May was $740,243.19. Are there any questions?
And just to remind everyone, because I know we have a number of new members, but when you look at our budget and you see that we're at 81% spent, that is okay because we run on a state fiscal year. So we are running from July to June. So a May is the second to last month in our fiscal year. So at an 81% spent, we are okay. We are not 81% spent halfway through the year. So just wanting to make sure that everybody's cognizant of that fiscal year timeframe.
And if there are not any questions, I'd like to ask for board approval of the May financial report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. James?
All right, we do have, Mayor Jenkins could not be here today, so we do have his secretary's report, which is that there were administrative modifications done, in the month of June. Administrative modifications are, items that the board has given our staff approval to make between meetings. These are usually minor changes in the transportation improvement program. So it might be moving within a fiscal year or minor monetary changes or just essentially minor edits. You can see that full listing in your packet. Also, the public can find that online. Happy to answer any questions about that. This is presented for informational purposes only. There is no board action needed. And that would conclude Mayor Jenkins' report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins.
He filed that very early for me. So, yeah.
And new business, James?
Yeah, in new business today, we do have an item that we are asking to add to the agenda. We have an addendum. We talked at length last month about just different challenges we've had in trying to get parts for our existing buses. We do have an order for 4 new flyers, which would be a different vehicle than what we have. And we're excited about that, but those vehicles won't deliver till Q4. And so our partners over at Transpo, they have recently, we have worked with them over the years to transition their fleet to CNG vehicles. And so as they have just received the last of their new CNG vehicles, they are disposing of some of their Gillig buses, their 35-foot Gillig buses that they are offering to us for free. And they're also willing to give us parts and a number of things for those vehicles so that we have just some extra spares in the overall fleet. And so we would be asking to add resolution 2623, which would allow for the free transfer of those 3 buses from their fleet into our fleet. So what we'd be asking for first is not whether or not to vote on that resolution, but to add it to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Move to the agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
All right, and we'll present that at the end of our resolutions today.
Caitlin?
Good morning.
Morning.
I have 2 items for Transportation Resolution 25-23. Item A is for the town of Bourbon. It's adding in the right-of-way phase to their sidewalks project. This was a project identified through the regional seller application for Marshall County. And so through project development, they realized that they would need some funding for right-of-way acquisition. And so that is scheduled for programming this into the transportation improvement program for fiscal year 24. And then item B is an NDOT initiated project. It's for the intersection of State Route 15 at County Road 18, and it's increasing construction funding in fiscal year 24 by $841,827. So this project's expected to go to a letting, I believe, the August or September timeframe. And if there are no questions about these projects, I'd ask for your approval of resolution 25-23.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
All right, now we'll move into resolution 2623, which I've pre-presented to you. So, Transpo has three 2004 35-foot Gilligs that they'd be offering to us for the low price of free. We would be asking to accept those into our fleet. We would work to get those vehicles in wrapped or have advertisements on them and be able to use them as spares within our fleet. Also, since this represents the last of their Gilligs, they have remaining parts that they would be willing to provide to us as well, because they'll no longer be needing them. Happy to answer any questions about this, but that is essentially the high-level version of Resolution 2623.
So sometimes free can be the most expensive price because you're probably not getting their best, and it binds you to a lot of maintenance.
Yes, we would absolutely agree that they are not going to be a silver bullet for the fleet, that they will definitely come with a price. That's also why Transpo is giving them to us for free. But at this point, we are short on just overall vehicle, because as we talked last month, our existing vehicle manufacturer has had major problems with part sourcing for us. We've been waiting over, at this point, probably 18 months for springs. That's and so there has been challenges with just part sourcing since 2020 with them. And so as we're transitioning to a new vehicle manufacturer, we're very excited about that. We'll have new flyers. Starting in Q4, we'll have our first 4. So we have a plan for replacement, but just to offer interim solutions, this would be an option, so that we do have transit vehicle that is out there and operating as backups compared to all the other options that we have right now. It may be expensive in some maintenance costs, but I do think that there's a trade-off of having that vehicle availability and kind of the backup. So the other item is that with accepting these vehicles, it's not as if we have to then hold them in our fleet for 20 some years, because we're not necessarily purchasing them in the same way. So we're not held to like a 500,000 mile clock on them, or a 10-year useful life. So as soon as we're not needing these vehicles, we'd be able to transition them out of the fleet.
So they're 20 years old. They're all in working order.
They're in working order, yeah. We had maintenance techs go out and take a look at them before we were accepting them.
And,
Now, that doesn't mean that they still won't be a maintenance challenge.
and the inventory that we are also, receiving for the bargain price of free.
Mhm.
So is that value more on the actual parts versus the value of the inventory?
They'd be,
For instance, are there springs?
yeah, unfortunately, they're not all the same parts,
Okay.
different vehicles, but they would go with these vehicles. So our current manufacturer is Eldorado, and so just some different part sourcing. But, if we do have maintenance challenges with some of these, we would at least be getting, some parts with them upfront.
And this is just to bridge the gap from now till
Correct.
Q4.
Yes.
And then after they're transitioned out of our fleet, we own these, then they're given to us.
They're giving them
Any
to us.
residual value is ours.
Yeah, so what we would do is when we transition them out of the fleet, we would sell them through, we typically use gov deals because we usually don't have a large inventory where, us holding our own auction makes sense. So we use gov deals, which is essentially an online platform for us to do disposition. And then public bidding happens through that website, kind of like eBay. And then, that there are different levels that then retained earnings and all of those things apply. There are different rules and things like that, but anything under usually $5,000 is then what we could keep.
The fact that we're getting parts that would be used on these vehicles, I think is significant. Any estimate of what it's gonna cost to put those wrap them, as you mentioned?
Oh, yeah, the wrapping is usually not something that has a large expense, so we do have an advertising company that we work with. So if they are needing additional, based on the current inventory of sales for advertising, they would wrap that, and we split those profits on advertisement 50-50 more or less. And so that cost, if we're wrapping them with advertisement, we never realize. We just share in that profit. But if we were, say, wrapping them with our own design in say a green or some sort of design that's a trolley on it, there would be an expense. But I mean, it's usually fairly minor compared to the overall expenses.
Thank you.
Yep.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Propel, James?
Caitlin, are you doing our introductions or am I?
If you want to,
All right.
presentation. Great.
So, many of you know, well, actually all of you know, but, NDOT has been working on, looking at completing one and then looking at potential investments for US 30 in order to take a corridor-based look at those improvements. They have embarked on what they have called Propel. It is not sponsored by Gatorade. But the Propel, the Pell portion is what's called planning and environmental linkages. So this is essentially a study that if projects come out of this, that they would be a little further down the line on the overall federal environmental process. Okay. So this looks at a number of alternatives and comes up with a suite of options for what type of investments might be made on the corridor. And so today we have with us folks from CDM Smith to just kind of give us a briefing on where things are at with the Propel US 30, US 31 East and West. Because it's a long corridor, it has been broken up into an east section and a west section, but I don't want to have to do their presentation for them. I'm sure they will cover all of this. So gentlemen, if you want to introduce yourselves, and then we'll get your presentation started.
Sure. My name is Brett Lackey. I'm with from CDM Smith. I'm the consultant project manager on the US 30 West segment of the Propel study.
My name is Rusty Holt. I work at WSP. We're managing the US 30 East portion,
Great.
and we'll explain what that means in terms of.
There we go. We see it.
That's one of the presentation.
Oh, notes.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Okay. And how does this work? Okay. All right. So apologize, I need to access my notes here. We had some technical difficulties this morning. So to go back. All right. So thank you for taking some time to let us talk about Propel this morning. Just as a reminder, the Propel studies, it comprised 180 miles of US 30 and US 31 in northern Indiana. The study areas were divided into 4 distinct study areas, intentionally, really to focus on the specific transportation needs and the community goals and objectives within each study area. So while there are 4 study teams for this purpose, we've aligned our vision statements, and that includes enhancing safety, providing equitable transportation solutions, and complementing community goals and objectives. And so the goal here is that we think about the corridor holistically and identify potential solutions that will work together across our 4 study lines. And so public feedback is an integral part of this study. It's helping us make informed decisions that will help guide the next generation of transportation investments in the corridors. So we're wrapping up right now our second round of public engagement, and we wanted to share with you a little bit about what we've heard so far and what we're doing with that information. And so far, our efforts have focused on defining the why. So why are we evaluating these potential improvements, and why are those potential improvements important to the local communities? So we'll just spend just a few minutes here summarizing the work that's been done to date. So to get to the why, we asked for public input, and we've had nearly 2,000 community members engage with the 4 different study areas in a variety of ways. Across all 4 studies, we've had 9 public meetings, 55 community office hours events, and that's where we're going out to the community twice a month at rotating locations and times to answer questions, take comments on one-on-one conversations. We've attended community events to go out and meet residents where they are. We've connected with business owners, local elected officials, school districts, emergency service providers, resource agencies, and really we're trying to understand the community's transportation needs and why they're important. And so we've received more than 1,300 public comments across the 4 study areas. I would suspect that number's increased since this last round of public engagement. And so while those comments have focused on a variety of topics, there were 3 things that were consistently mentioned across all 4 of the study areas. And those were mobility, including access to and from and across the corridors. The second thing was safety concerns, and the third was travel along the corridor, including regional and statewide mobility. And so from there, we gathered data. In response to the comments, the study teams have done several things. We've contacted school districts to understand bus routes and talked to emergency management directors about fire, police, ambulance needs. We've also met with local economic development professionals, Farm Bureau reps, county officials, others. We've been reviewing past plans. We've been collecting traffic data, and we've spent a significant amount of time out in these corridors to view the issues firsthand. So all that feedback and data has been used to inform the identified transportation issues and desired outcomes. And so we'll go over those now. Really, the fit and function of US 30 and the 31 corridors, they vary by location and community. And so therefore, each study, we had to identify our own issues and desired outcomes in each respective area. And so this approach allows us to address the unique transportation needs and the considerations in each study area. And so right now we're going to focus on US 30 West and US 30 East. And so one of the big data sets that we've had to sort through over the last year or so was traffic. So evaluating traffic through the study areas really was comprised of 2 steps. The first step was to predict the number of cars and trucks that are using the corridors. So NDOT has a state-of-the-art model that they use to predict traffic through the state. The study teams took this model and then added more detail around US 30 and 31. And those enhancements include looking at local roads, calibrating the model based on the traffic counts at over 350 locations, accounting for future and land development. And so this model helps us understand current traffic volumes and how traffic is expected to increase in the future. And our future projections are going out to 2045 for this study. So step 2 was to analyze how this traffic moves along the corridors. For example, how long does it take to drive for instance, from Kokomo to Plymouth. How long do people have to wait to turn left onto Division Road? These types of questions. So the study team's using industry standard traffic analysis tools for that step. We're looking at how traffic moves today and how it will move 20 years from now. And we're looking at how the traffic flows through the current roads. And as we evaluate alternatives, we'll be looking at how to move traffic better through the road system. And so now to move on to get a little bit more into the specifics of US 30 West. And as a reminder, the US 30 West study area includes US 30, obviously, from State Road 49 in Valparaiso east to Beach Road. It also includes a segment of US 31, which extends from the US 30 interchange south to County Road 700 north in Fulton County. So heading into this second round of public engagement that we're wrapping up right now, the US 30 West study area, we've had more than 350 community members engaged with the study. We've had 3 public meetings. We had one in Hamlet in November of 2022, and one in Argos and Wanata this last month in June. And in each case, we had an in-person meeting as well as a virtual option for folks that could participate, so they could participate in whatever ways convenient for them. We've also hosted 11 community office hour events just for 30 West. Again, that's where we're out in the community twice a month at rotating locations to collect as much public comment as we can. We've attended these community outreach events to meet the residents where they are, and we've connected again with the local business owners, especially the farmers, local elected officials, school districts, all within the 30 West area, to find out what the community's transportation needs are again and why they're important. And so for the US 30 West study area specifically, 28% of the comments we've received thus far mention access to and across the corridors as their primary concern. And then 18% of comments mention the need to preserve rural character and support farming as an industry. And then safety concerns were a close third, with 17% of all comments mentioning safety. So as our next step, again, we gathered data. We reviewed the past plans, collected the traffic data, and again, spent time out in the corridors, meeting with the different representatives, Farm Bureau, economic development folks, county officials, school boards. Took all that feedback, again, to inform the specific transportation issues and desired outcomes of the 30 West corridor. And so we'll go over those now. So mobility. The US 30 West corridor is functioning well from a mobility perspective. That means it's moving people and goods at average speeds that are near or exceed the posted speed limit, which means there's a little congestion. So that said, specific events such as seasonal harvests, county fairs, these can create short-term congestion issues. Now, considering future needs to be evaluated, anticipated traffic levels, as I mentioned, out to 2045, we continue to see low levels of congestion. And so this is good news. This tells us that new lanes or other capacity adding improvements are not necessarily needed. It's probably no surprise. There are a lot of trucks using this corridor. The trucks make up about a third of the total traffic along US 30 and about a fourth of the total traffic on 31 during the busiest times. So the US 30 West team has heard that safety is a primary concern due to the number and severity of crashes in the area. This confirmed what we found while compiling and analyzing about 5 years of traffic data. We found that between 2017 and 2021, there were more than 1,200 crashes in our study area. So the majority of these crashes are rear end or right angle crashes. More specifically, these types of crashes accounted for more than half, 59% of the total crashes in the 30 West area. So this is a heat map of the crash locations in 30 West. Obviously, yellow is showing the highest crash locations, red and orange the next highest, and then purples and blues are the lower rates of crashes. So the locations reflect what people have told us in the meetings and online, that crashes are concentrated at intersections, median openings, driveways, and those account for about a third of all the crashes, and that includes 5 fatal and 118 injury crashes during the 5 years of traffic study, safety study. So this is some important information. This will help us focus on potential improvements that can enhance safety in the corridor. So driveways. So the US 30 West study team looked at 152 driveways that have direct access onto US 30 and 31, and we compared those to NDOT standards. So through that exercise, we've identified that 93 driveways do not meet NDOT's access management guidelines. And so one way the safety could be improved is that ensuring that most of these access points along US 30 and 31 meet the NDOT guidelines, which is going to reduce the number of potential conflict points and the amount of traffic that moves at different speeds, different speed differentials throughout the corridor. Now, we understand 30 and 31 function as an important part of the local street network. And so access consolidation strategies will need to balance safety and regional mobility needs with local access and circulation needs as well. In terms of facility needs within the corridor, some of the ramps, some of the bridges, some of the medians in the US 30 West study area were installed many years ago. They don't meet current standards, design standards. Why is this important? It means that some interchange ramps are short or have tight curves that make it difficult for some vehicles, some traffic, especially large trucks, to get up to highway speeds when entering, or it requires them to begin slowing down long before they get on the ramp when exiting. And so that creates conflicts on the highway. And in addition, where the medians are narrow, it can be hard for large vehicles to make those turns. And then lower bridges in just a couple of locations in our study area could potentially limit the size of trucks that can use this important statewide freight corridor. Which brings us to where we are right now with our draft purpose and need statement. And again, this is specific to US 30 West. So the purpose of transportation improvements along the US 30 West corridor is to improve regional mobility and safety along US 30 and 31, and to preserve both as vital statewide transportation corridors for moving people and goods. And in terms of the needs, the US 30 West study area has closely spaced driveways, experiences a higher rate of crashes at the median openings and the intersections and the driveways. And so a proposed study purpose is to improve safety and reduce the number and severity of crashes. This will include reducing the number of direct access driveways, but doing so in a way that still meets local access needs. And then in terms of facilities, some of these interchange ramps, as I mentioned, are shorter than current design standards. So it can be hard to get up to speed when entering the highway or exiting the highway. And this affects overall highway speed, creates conflicts that increase the likelihood of crashes. Also, these narrow median openings in some locations are making turns and crossings difficult, especially for large vehicles. And so a proposed study purpose, again, is to improve ramps, medians, and bridges within the US 30 West study area to improve safety and operations. And with that, I will hand it over to Rusty to discuss US 30 East.
Great, thank you. So as I mentioned, US 30 East, I'm managing that portion of the study. So from Beach Road in Marshall County over to Ohio, we're ignoring the parts that are already an interstate around Fort Wayne, because they're already an interstate and the highest use. There's no reason to study that again. So for our section, prior to this last round of public meetings, we had about 600 public comments that have come in. Wide variety of topics. For us, these three were the highlights. First, safety concerns. About 37% of our total comments revolved around safety. Another 36% talked about access to the 30 corridor, whether maintaining it or consolidating it or what it should look like. Another 25% talked about just mobility through the corridor. So how they interact with it, whether by vehicles or bicycles or pedestrians, just 25% were talking about those topics. So because safety was such a high priority, as Brett mentioned, we also looked at crashes for our section. So between 2017 and 2021, when we were studying the crashes, we had more than 2,700 crashes in our section alone, which is a lot of crashes. Of those, about 60% were rear end crashes, which occur frequently at traffic signals. So it makes sense based on our corridor with 4 traffic signals. There's lots more rear end crashes. Of the more severe, serious injury crashes in our section, 70% of those occurred in urban areas. So Warsaw, Columbia City, west side of Fort Wayne. Those are where the majority of the serious injury crashes occurred. So our desired outcome as part of our study is to improve roadway safety by identifying solutions that can reduce the number and severity of crashes, both at individual locations as well as the corridor as a whole. We've also heard a lot about traffic speeds in our section. So we looked at data that's publicly available through GPS shared data and compared it to the posted speed limits. So for our section, traffic speeds are actually on average lower than the posted speed limit, which usually surprises people because most people feel like they're getting blown by on the roadway. But it is an average of our total section, so everybody that's slowing down for a traffic signal or speeding up from a traffic signal gets included in that average. So we're taking a secondary look at this data to see what kind of percentage of people are speeding in between intersections, just to get an idea of how much that speed differential is out there, because that's a safety concern. Somebody going super fast versus super slow.
Just ask a question. Is there a reason that you're not using 85th percentile speed instead of using an actual average?
85th percentile.
So usually when you're doing traffic counting,
Sure.
when you do that traffic counting, you then take the 85th percentile speed to see what those speeds are.
Sure.
Whereas taking an average, you're going to see that skew versus a free flow speed.
That is a good question.
Okay.
We started with average just because it's fairly easily understandable by
Sure.
everybody. But 85th percentile would be another interesting data point that we can add as we're re-looking at the overall speeds. So we do want to identify solutions that improve efficiency and reliability of the US 30 corridor. So trying to get the average speeds closer to the posted speed limit, 85th percentile, but also bring down those upper speeds so it's a more reliable corridor. We also know crashes are, in addition to a safety concern, they're also a reliability concern. If you're driving on the roadway and a crash occurs, it impacts your travel time. So based on our analysis of the data, on average, there's crashes have occurred on 265 days of the year, somewhere along within our study area. Translates to a 73% likelihood that there was one or more crashes along US 30 in our study area on any given day. So obviously that would impact your travel. If you're expecting to get to Fort Wayne by a certain time, a crash occurring would probably detour you or make you late. So a desired outcome of reducing crashes and improving safety also benefits mobility and reliability of the corridor. Similar to Brett, we have a lot of access points along our corridor as well that we want to take a second look at as we're moving through the study. So those can create potential safety and mobility concerns as they introduce interruption points in the traffic. We have 189 access points. That's wide variety of things, 80 driveways, 67 total intersections, of which 24 signals, and there are 18 field entrances along our corridor. So as part of our next step, we will be reviewing all of those driveways and finding ways to improve access control, consolidate some access points if it makes sense, see which ones are critical for mobility and access to the corridor, and try to find ways to make it slightly safer while maintaining some sort of access along the corridor. Next, we looked at traffic volumes because it can be congested in the urban areas. So we looked at 29 different intersections along our corridor. These are the higher classified roadways, so the major collectors, arterials, as identified by NDOT and the counties. So of those 29 intersections, 10 of them had some movement that was graded as an E or an F, like school. A is great and F is failing. So NDOT looks at E's and F's as potential concerns. So in 2045, we have 10 of those intersections. Most of the traffic along US 30 is operating fine now and into the future. A's through C's and D's, it's mostly the side streets and traffic wanting to turn left from US 30 onto those side streets that have the poor level of service. So as we look into the future, we want to find outcomes that help reduce delay and improve operations for local traffic. And finally, we've heard that improving safety and mobility for long distance passenger and freight vehicles along US 30 is important. Again, similar to Brett, but our section has about 30% of total traffic are heavy vehicles. And freight volumes in the region are anticipated to increase between 50 and 60% by 2045. That's growth, not like it's going to become half of all traffic, just based on the freight plan that NDOT has. So US 30 will play a prominent role in supporting that growth, and we want to make sure that we maintain or improve operations along US 30 as one of our goals. So based on public input and our data analysis, we have 3 needs that we've identified. First is to improve roadway safety in the corridor for all users. Second is to improve mobility for local users accessing and crossing US 30. And third is to enhance the efficiency and reliability of US 30 as a regional and statewide corridor. So that gets us to the public meetings that we just had in June. So talking about what's coming up next, the next part of the study, we'll be moving through a screening process. So we'll have 3 levels of screening process. We're starting at the universe of alternatives. It's really, like it sounds, a universe full of stars. So there's all sorts of alternatives on the table. And then we'll move through a screening process where we identify certain measures of performance. To some of those alternatives won't make sense based on the needs that we have in our areas. So 3 screening steps. The level 1 is the universe of alternatives. So we have individual intersections where we'll have concepts, solutions that would work at an intersection. And then we'll have a series of alternatives along the corridor where it's like these several intersection alternatives get placed together into a corridor-wide alternative. It's not to say that my 58 miles that I'm looking at will have 1 or 2 alternatives for the whole 58 miles. I kind of imagining Warsaw will look very different than the section between Warsaw and Columbia City. But that's generally the concept of how we're moving forward, is identify things that work at specific intersections and then string those together into larger alternatives. So imagine a gigantic draft across this, because we're still working through this, what this looks like. Because our purpose and need is still in the draft form and we have comments coming in through the end of this month. This is the next step of moving through the universe, but we need to keep moving into that next step while we finalize our purpose and need. So generally, we have primary concepts that we're going to look at that solve the majority of the issues. So the number of needs met for Brett is 3 or more because he has 4 needs. I only have 3 needs in my area, so it's 3. Complementary concepts are things that kind of address the needs, maybe 1 or 2 needs, but don't solve everything. So those will get looked at as a complement to one of those primary concepts. And then design elements are things that make sense, maybe solve a need or are practical, but don't solve the wide range of needs. So we'll look at that as we're looking at primary concepts, the alternatives for different sections, maybe the design element makes sense to be incorporated with one of those other alternatives. And again, we're working through this still, so it's subject to change a little bit. So as I mentioned, the universe of alternatives is the starting point. It's a wide range of alternatives. We have 54 potential concepts. It says US 30 West. We're the same corridor, so we have the same number of alternatives. So we're starting with a wide range of things that could possibly work. The screening criteria will move us through narrowing that list down. So the first list is like anything that could possibly work. So whether it's something as simple as replacing signs or something as complex as turning the whole road into a freeway, there's a wide range in between there. So we're kind of narrowing through with that screening criteria, and we anticipate 30 to 40 concepts will advance to level 2. So out of the universe 30 to 40 things we'll carry on that we'll have to look at for the level 2 screening. Those 30 to 40 could be a handful of primary alternatives that we talked about earlier that solve all of our needs, and then a whole bunch of complementary ones that address some of the needs without solving the big picture. So the level 2 screening of the preliminary alternatives, we'll be looking at qualitative things, so it's not just like this would look good here, but like data behind it, like how many crashes would this solve? What kind of improvements in congestion would we see? So it's based on the needs, the goals that we identified. We will start looking at cost and at impacts and at feasibility of each of these alternatives at this stage on a big level. So not like this will cost exactly $102,000, but like how many dollar signs does it cost? And then what kind of environmental and human impacts it'll have, and how feasible is it, and then have a ranking of those to move through to the level 2 screening. Things on the bottom are our order of process. So location specific screening, we're going to look at each intersection, move through kind of what it would look like, and then have a screening report and a public comment period at the end of the screening report. Level 3 screening will be similar, just in more detail. So this is the process of that, moving through from kind of a conceptual design, analyzing it, looking at a more detailed cost estimate since we're down to a fewer number of alternatives. We can look at things a little bit more closely. Get to that more in a second. And then moving through until we get to our next public meeting after the level 3 screening. Then the draft health study report, another public meeting, and then we'll be finished. And that is still targeted for the fall of 24. So at the end of each screening step, we'll have a smaller number of alternatives, as I mentioned earlier. However, the level of detail associated with each alternative will increase as we move through each level of screening. So that'll allow us to look at things in more detail and provide a better comparison between our alternatives. So those 3 steps, the universe of alternatives, should be published later this fall. And then we'll have a 30-day public comment period. We'll announce when it's ready for review through all the different normal ways, through our website, through media releases, newspaper notices, emails, if you're signed up for our emails. The level 2 screening will follow after that. I anticipate that will be ready this winter. And again, another 30-day comment period after that's published to our website. And then finally, the level 3 screening will be ready either in the spring or late spring, early summer of 2024. And that, as I showed on the last slide, will be when we have our next public information meeting. So we'll be back out to the public to get comments on where we've landed, the alternatives that made it through that level 3 screening. So as mentioned now, we're at the purpose and need stage. We're taking comments through the end of July for our draft purpose and need. It's been published to our study website. Then we'll move into that alternatives analysis, which will take us for the next nine months or so, and then finalize the health study after that. With that, we're at the end of the presentation. If we have any questions, additional questions for either of us, we'll try to answer them.
Rusty, thanks for everything you guys have done. Brett, I think the study is organized very well and it's providing a lot of public input. I think the purpose and need that we've seen, and I wish you would have put our heat map up there on the east.
I do have it.
Looks like a Christmas tree.
Very yellow and red.
So I think we're coming up with the obvious, what we've known for a long time, I think, is being basically going to be finalized, to be my certain opinion. Obviously, then the next question is, how quickly are we going to be able to get this done? Obviously, you're not done with the Pell. I know then there's more environmental study done. Approximately how long will that portion take? with the federal component of the environmental study. Is that a year? I'm probably asking a unfair question.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So at the end of our study, we'll have several alternatives for just various different locations. Those will come out of our study, and then that will take it into their normal project development process. So it needs to get programmed through their normal yearly programming of future projects. And then they'll decide when it fits into their budget and fits into their statewide needs or the district's need, each district's needs. So it's a little unknown. It just depends on how important each project is compared to the other things they already have in place.
Well, I mean, I think given what we've seen on the purpose and need with regards to safety and accident rates, you know, you're looking at probably a year to get the environmental study done, and then probably a 5-year program to get the shovel in the ground. And then, so there's a sense of urgency. I know in the US 30 coalition, I think we've been patient through this process because I think it's done very well. And I think if we can read the tea leaves from what we've seen, the purpose and need, from a public official standpoint, safety is critical. You know, these intersections are below service. I think, how many was it? 6 of the 24 lights in the eastern section were failing as far as their ability to handle traffic. And that's only going to increase until something's done. So I appreciate the information you're getting out there. It's coming straight to the public. But again, from an elected official standpoint, safety is critical, it's paramount, and we can't wait any longer to get something done. The other part, we're hearing a lot on the US 30 corridor, especially the East Corridor with business and commerce. There's some big businesses, Amazon, SDI, Zimmer Biomet, rely on that road for lots of things. You know, their workforce getting in and out, their goods and services. So that is, again, as a public official, safety is paramount. But a very, very, very close second is sustaining and maintaining and growing that vital economic corridor within our state. 2 things I'll mention to you. I sat and listened to a group of site selectors, and you know, they said, well, you can have all the industrial parks you want along the highway, but if they can't get out on that road and go 75 miles an hour, they're not interested. So you know, that's huge. So with that, you know, I would just again blow the horn of safety and getting this thing done as soon as possible, but understanding that the economic development impact is in a lot of people's mind even more important. So thank you for good job, and hopefully we'll get moving quicker. So
thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just a quick question from the economic development side is that I don't recall seeing it as part of the purpose and need as much. Is there anything that would be considered or included from the economic development? I know you have safety and mobility in there. Mobility oftentimes can be in reference to congestion. And I don't know, there are portions of US 30 where I'd absolutely make a claim that there is congestion, especially on the eastern side. But mobility tends to refer to congestion. And for a lot of US 30, we have 30% truck moving at 65, 70 miles an hour. So I wouldn't say it's congested, but that is a key corridor for goods movement. And I don't really see economic development as a major tenet within the purpose and need.
Well, so the actual purpose statement, the movement preserving the corridors for the movement of people and goods, I think is where we would.
Yeah, I just remember in the west section, there was the specific comment of like preserving agricultural purposes, like, or uses, access. But there wasn't necessarily anything explicit that I saw, and I could have missed it, just more hammering that point home about the economic development side of things.
Yeah, it's certainly baked in to our purpose and need, but, the purpose and need isn't finalized yet, so certainly take that under advisement that it could be, kind of teased out of it a bit more specific.
You talk about the decreased reliability of the roadway when there's safety concerns. And that to me is what then needs to be expanded on.
Yeah.
It's economic development. If you don't have a reliable, safe road.
Sure.
To put it into context for just Marshall and Kosciuszko County, I did this quick on our dashboard, so it might not be 100% on all the numbers, but a general reference point from 2019 through 2022 on US 30, just Marshall and Kosciuszko saw 10 fatal collisions and 83 serious incapacitating collisions. That's not the number of people, that's the number of collisions. US 31, and because I did it quick, it's probably north and south of 30. So, but it was 6 fatalities, and then 83 serious or incapacitating injuries just in that 4-year time period. And again, those are number of crashes, not number of people that were involved in those. So
That would be Marshall only, right?
because I was doing it quick, it might have gone north. I could report back later on what it was just for south, but if you look at it, many of those are in the like 9A, at State Road 10, those kind of areas. I don't recall if any of the fatals, one would have been the railroad, those kind of things. So, but to that point, with safety being a potential primary driver here, is there anything that through the data that you're seeing or the feedback that you're hearing that projects could be potentially accelerated where the purpose and the need is so evident that we don't necessarily need to wait till 2024 to go through the filtering process, that there's something pressing now that would need to be done on a more accelerated timeline? I mean, I know that's happening in other areas with, say, State Road 10 or with the railroad separation. Wasn't sure if that was a potential for any of your current sections of the corridor.
Not yet, I guess, because we're just getting into the alternative screening process and even talking about what improvements would. And I can't say that we've necessarily identified that just from the safety analysis we've done so far, but it's certainly not off the table as we go further in our analysis. It wouldn't be ruled out, but it's not something that we've identified yet or any specific areas just yet. Yeah, but over the next year, that's something that we could look at a little further.
And I would say even those projects you mentioned, like State Road 10, like they're still multiple years away and like they're getting started today.
Right.
So it would be a similar, like, even if there was something that came out of one of these studies and said it needs to be done now, it would still be several years until then that can get everything ready to just start trying to jerk on that.
We've been working on US 31 coalition for a long time, stated goal of having essentially interstate quality road from Indianapolis South Bend. A little less familiar with US 30. What is the goal? Is it, Mayor, you mentioned 75 mile an hour traffic through there. Is it interstate?
Well, that was just an anecdotal remark from a trucker. I wouldn't propose 75 miles an hour, but it's basically a freeway. It's full freeway from state line up to State Road 49 in Porter County.
The US 30 Coalition began about 6 or 7 years ago. I think our first meeting was in Plymouth, actually. I cannot say enough about this man sitting right here and his leadership over the last 7 years. So, Mayor Joe has been our chairman and just
Listen, let's be real. I went up to go to the bathroom in Warsaw and I came back and I was elected the chairman.
there you go.
That's a true story.
And it was a good decision.
just wanted to throw that out. Thank you. Done a great job with this.
Mr. President. I know I'm a little late to the game on this one. I just, got on the board in January and haven't had the opportunity to contribute to this process. But if I recall, I think the official submission for suggestions on behalf of Marshall County government indicated that we would be okay with limited access at Oak and Pioneer. And at least on behalf of the council, we would like to make sure that there is still full access at Oak and Pioneer. And that's our input as far as on the economic development side. So we hope that can be something you guys can take into consideration. That's vital to our economic development in Marshall County. So.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. So comments will be taken till the end of July. Yeah. I would suggest propelus30.com. It's a very accessible way to give comments. There's a button that says leave comments. I would ask that anyone that has those good comments, good or bad, who cares? They want comments, so appreciate it.
Gentlemen, thank you both for coming today. I'm sure we'll ask you to come back as this moves forward.
Thanks for your comments.
You're leaving, you may get elected to something here.
Schedule too.
Okay, yeah, staff update.
All right, we have a few items that we wanted to share with you and provide you with information regarding grants and funding. So I'm going to turn it over to Dana. You were introduced to Dana last month. Dana is our new short-range transportation planner. She's going to talk briefly about a few grant opportunities that are out there.
Good morning. So NDOT's rail office is accepting fiscal year 2024 railroad grade crossing fund grant applications through July 28th. These grants provide funding for railroad highway crossing improvement projects throughout Indiana and make Indiana railroad crossing safer. Funding amounts have increased, so the previous maximum amount was $45,000, and now the maximum amount for applicants to apply for is $50,000. All applications must be submitted through the Grant Trail Project system through ITAP, and you can find a program overview and application guides through NDOT's website as well as MACOG's recent e-newsletter.
Yeah, and the Railroad Grade Crossing Fund, it's a great way that if you're doing, say, pavement markings or different safety kind of at the intersect or at the crossing location, you can help get those expenses paid for through that program. Doesn't always work out. It is a competitive pool. It is only $55,000, but it is a potential opportunity. There is also a rolling program that exists for crossing closures. So if you're looking at closing any crossing, there are fundings that are available for that as well.
Thank you, Dana.
Thanks, Dana.
A little update on the state's community crossing national grant program. It opened up a few weeks ago, and so they're now accepting applications for this July call for funding, and it will be closing July 28th. So we've been working with some of the community staff to help assist in their application process. And we'll be happy to help others if they haven't reached that. At the national level, they just announced a program, the Multimodal Project Discretionary Grants Notice of Funding. So this includes actually 3 programs. One of those is MEGA, which is as it applies for projects of or significant. So these projects are over 100 million to 500 million. The other 2 programs are relevant to our areas. The infra program, the Infrastructure for Rebuilding America program, there's about $3.1 billion in this program, meant for freight or highway projects of national or regional significance. And then the rural program, there'll be $675 million in this program. 90% of that will go towards projects that are in 25 million or more. But two very good projects for moving forward some of those very important critical infrastructure. So the application is open now and will be closing August 21st.
Dustin's in the corner.
He's right
He's in that corner.
Other
All right.
corner.
I saw the mic.
Thanks, Caitlin.
So a couple months ago, I was here and I had my prop for the tactical urbanism stuff, which, by the way, that's still going on. So if you have tactical urbanism projects, get in touch with me. But today I have a new prop, and you guys are welcome to take a look at it over there. The data bike. So I think we hinted at it before that, but give you a little more detail. The bike itself is an e-bike. The idea is to keep a fairly constant speed so that we have a sensor on there that will record the roughness of the trails. We'll ultimately have a map that will show kind of the qualitative of the trails, qualitative measures of the trails. And then you see the staff on the back there, that's a 360-degree camera. So we'll have a trails view, kind of the streets view version of trails, of all of our trails in the area. Then there's a smaller camera on the back that will actually take photos of the trail itself, kind of detailed photos. So when the map has different colored areas, red, yellow, green, you could click on the red areas, for instance, and look at the 360 to kind of see where you're at, and then kind of toggle down to the detail to look at the actual trail. Within that, you'll also be able to measure and sort of become a valuable planning tool for actually working on trails and budgeting for future trails work. Also, again, the kind of the qualitative part, you can anticipate things that may need to be worked on in future years. So I think a really nice tool to be able to make sure that our trails stay at the high quality that we have.
Yeah. And as the trail systems mature and as we build more trails, there's the constant question that comes up of maintenance, right? And so one of those things that we think will be helpful here is being able to create asset management plans for our trail system. This also, through doing this, may unlock the potential that if we wanted to, we could invest in those trail maintenance projects with federal funds potentially, because we would have an asset management plan. So essentially what we're working on here and what you get to see today is the starting point of the bike with its 360 camera, its camera on the back, its data collection system, and we'll be operationalizing that here shortly. So it'll be starting to ride around all of our trails throughout our communities, collecting that data, and we'll be able to put that together for all of you and your technical folks.
The mayor's gonna be riding over.
If you want to, you can sign up.
And more
We'd love
fun,
to
I
have
think
you.
that'd be a great video to use when we're stuck on treadmills at hotels and you can just follow it.
So we will have the 360 view. Maybe we can sell it on Peloton or something where you can do the 360 view. But so we wanted to bring it today because we thought it was a cool piece of technology that we'll have in our office, but wanted to be able to show it off for you today. So
Any of you are welcome to join me. We intend to kind of, I've had a lot of offers from people in different areas willing or wanting to kind of join and tag along. So the more the merrier. We can always delete you out with the video.
Thank you, Dustin.
Thanks, Dustin.
Morning, Leah.
Morning. So NDOT will be hosting public information meetings across the state for their electric vehicle infrastructure program. They're federally required to have a plan, and a plan update is due. I'm told the draft of that plan should be on their website today. I have QR code to the plan as well as how to sign up for the public information meeting that will be in our region. That will be in person at St. Mary's College on Monday, July 24th. The presentation will be at noon, and that's in the Carroll Auditorium. As a reminder, there will be about $100 million in federal funds flowing into the state over the next 5 years for about 60 locations where there'll be really fast charging stations along the highways, mostly interstates and US 31. But what we should see in this plan update is US 30 was proposed to be added to that network of alternative fuel corridors. There's some others like 41 and 50 in other parts of the state to build a better network, but we were advocating strongly for US 30, and we think that NDOT heard us and did propose that to be designated. But you'll be able to see more detail in that plan update when it comes out, hopefully today, or you can attend the meeting and get more information. That's what I have.
Thanks, Lou. Olivia Nix.
Good morning. I just wanted to reintroduce myself. I'm Olivia Nix. I just recently joined MACOG as a community development planner. I'm here to give an update about Oprah's regional conferences that they just announced. So they're holding 6 different conferences that they're calling Oprah in your region throughout July and August. So actually West was yesterday and Northeast is tomorrow. In Columbia City from 1 to 4 at Indian Springs Middle School. There's still seats available if you want to go or know anybody. You just need to register at Oprah's website. But the hope and goal of these sessions is to highlight local community successes, as well as go over Oprah's different programming and how it can help and benefit a community. Then it'll also provide a opportunity to network with other community leaders. That reminds me, it's open to both community members and leaders. And then there will be a panel at each session made up of community leaders, and they'll discuss collaboration initiatives that they felt were successful in their towns or cities. And there will be a keynote speaker at all sessions. It'll be the same speaker, and it's the mayor of the city of Sullivan, Clint Lamb. Yeah, that's all I have. So right here.
It'll be Okra in your region except our region. So the nearest one is Columbia City for us. So, yeah.
Okay, privilege of the floor. Anyone for public comment?
I would just like to publicly thank everyone at the MACOG staff for your advocacy for our community, for Marshall, Kosciuszko. I know big counties right here and demand a lot of care and handling, but when we've got issues in our counties, you're all there, and I really appreciate it. I'm sure we're going through really important time in this Pell study, and James, you've been great. Caitlin last week, I asked for some information on the state step, and you gave that to me, and that was very helpful. Lee, I appreciate your advocacy. It's just all good, and I really appreciate it.
Do you plan on staying on the coalition?
Yes. If I go out of the room to go to the bathroom, I'll probably be on.
Yeah, I'm glad it was you that went to the bathroom, not me.
I'm president for another year.
Okay.
And they know I'm not going to be mayor after this year, so they're good with me staying.
Shit. All right, number 9.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Please note, our next meeting is August 9th, back here. So the agenda.